Okay. A lot of men.
Yeah. Adam, how's it going?
Hey, doing well. How are you guys?
Doing very, very well. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this.
Of course, very happy to. Looking forward to it.
Awesome. So, figured we'd just start by maybe riffing a little bit on what's going on in the world and, in particular, work, because the last 3 years has probably changed the nature of work more than maybe the last 2,000 years before it. Would be curious just to hear from your perspective. You started Braintrust a number of years ago now. What are the biggest changes that you've seen that nobody has expected? In particular, ones that, people might not be talking about.
um, I'm not sure nobody's talking about it, but look, remote work was the big tectonic shift here. I mean, we started in 2018, 2019 when remote was just a good idea. Like it's just like, hey, you can't get these engineers to come to your office because there's not enough of them in your city, and they don't really like coming to offices, right? Because they work better from home or whatever. And then in March of 2020, it became the law, like no more offices. So that paradigm shift. Now you see a lot of headlines around like return to office and Meta's demanding everybody come back in and whatever, whatever. I find a correlation between how poorly a company is managed and how aggressively they want people back in the office, like one-to-one correlation. Because if now look, if you work in a Tesla factory, you have to be back in the office, right? But I'm talking about for knowledge workers, right? So for folks who are programmers or designers or writers or engineers of some sort that can do their job, lawyers and accountants, people do their job on a computer. If you need those people to be in the office so you can look over their shoulder, that means you're not measuring their output correctly, right? If you think the value they provide is by warming a chair in a cube farm in Palo Alto, maybe you're a bad manager and maybe your job shouldn't exist, right? So it's like this full stack of stupidity that we see climbing the kind of the corporate ladder here. So anyway, the biggest change is like remote became the new normal, and it most importantly, it gave back a degree of freedom and autonomy to workers, to people who trade their time for money, right? Which is the majority of people in the workforce. And so, no more moving to like some crap suburb of the Bay Area, overspending on a crappy house, and then sitting on the 101 for 3 hours a day, commuting to a shitty office, right? It's now you can just do your job from home and you get back those 3 hours to be with your family or to get exercise or to go buy healthier food or whatever it is, right? Just have a better life, like the advent of the iPhone and 24-hour email, it made us on all the time, but we got nothing in return for it. So this remote culture, like it's here to stay despite whatever like lumbering monolith companies are refusing to adopt it. And Braintrust has been an accidental beneficiary of that, right? It's 98% of the roles on Braintrust are remote only. And look, the companies that understand this are getting access to better talent faster, right? As they embrace it.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense. There's also the mega trend of like people of my generation being less like company men. I feel like in the sense that like they're not going to work at one company for 40 years and then get their pension and retire. It's much more like versatile and like, or like people of my generation are much more versatile in terms of like working at one company for a year or two. If they don't like it, they're more willing to move. So yeah, I think remote work and then also that trend of hopping around
Flexibility
between
Yeah,
companies.
I mean, I'll give you
Yeah.
exact counter. I mean, you're absolutely right. And I'm probably not in your generation. I'm probably the one older than yours, but I value that as well. But I mean, I'll give you a data point from Braintrust. We have, I'm on the core team that I own, or of all of like the core teams that run the business. I'm the only engineer. We have all the engineering work is done by community members, other nodes that are spread all over the world. And I've never actually met, except for one of them. I've only met one of them in person, ever. Like we have these remote first relationships. These folks value flexibility. They don't live anywhere. A lot of them are digital nomads, right? They do 3 months here and 3 months there and 3 months here. And what an amazing thing, right? Like 5 years ago, this wasn't possible. right? But now that we have all these tools and everything, like, you can run just a completely remote footprint and have it be more efficient and more productivity than everyone huddled into an office in San Francisco.
Yeah, no, the mega trends are bullish, bullish brain trust. But before we dive into brain trust and what you've been building, I wanted to talk a bit about your background. So, just at a very high level, Brain Trust is the world's first user-owned professional network and job marketplace. There's a great dashboard online that I found that I think that's maintained by you all or maybe a community member. But it looks like you've got almost 7,000 jobs open on the platform right now, hundreds of thousands of community members on the platform, applications submitted, you're earning real revenue. These are all great things to hear, especially in the deep in crypto world where a lot of companies are not generating revenue at this time. But yeah, back to your background, like why are you uniquely positioned to build this? Like what experiences did you have in the past or what roles were crucial to informing how you think about building out Brain Trust and why you wanted to build it out in the first
Sure.
place?
That dashboard, by the way, is info.braintrust.com for anyone listening who wants to see it. Yeah. So look, my whole career. So I studied computer science at Vanderbilt. Was a software engineer, not a great one. Moved to San Francisco right out of school, and just decided, like I wanted to start online businesses. Right. I graduated in 2002, so I sort of missed the first wave, and I'm like, I want to be part of this. What became Web 2, and so I built my whole career building two-sided web-enabled marketplaces. So my first one was an e-commerce marketplace that was acquired by Intuit. I then spent a year there as a product manager, learned all kinds of great things, and learned how much I hated commuting on the 101. And then started an automotive website connecting car owners and mechanics. Grew that into a national two-sided marketplace acquired by Advanced Auto Parts. And then in 2012, I started Doctor on Demand, which is one of the largest video telemedicine services in the world that connects doctors and patients for either medical or behavioral healthcare visits. Not exactly a marketplace because we know in healthcare there are no real markets. It's just kind of government controlled or cartel controlled pricing, but still a two-sided thing, right?
Yeah.
That connects supply and demand. And then so I did those three businesses and had a fair amount of success, and then invested in many more web-enabled marketplaces. And it occurred to me, the dirty little secret with web-enabled marketplaces is the corporate operator of that marketplace. Their incentive is to extract as much value from those marketplaces as possible, right? Usually through the form of fees, transaction fees. And so the more successful the operator is in increasing the take rate, the more incentive there is for the participants to leave, to disintermediate, to go somewhere else, right? Or for a low-cost carrier to cut in. And it's this weird conundrum of like Bill Gurley wrote about in 2013, a post called "A Rake Too Far." He's basically saying, you keep raking these people, you keep taking more and more value out of every transaction, you're mortgaging your future. Someone's going to disrupt you at some point. And so when I stumbled along tokens and smart contracts in 2015, 16, I realized like a token could represent control and ownership of a two-sided marketplace. And if you could convert a for-profit marketplace into basically a global co-op that's owned and controlled by the participants of the marketplace, you could keep incentives aligned very closely forever, right? Because the people who make their living on the network also own and control it. And so having been doing it sort of the old way for my whole career of being like the corporate man in the middle, it was intriguing to me to be able to design a system where the participants actually control and own the network. And so I wrote a paper in 2018 called The Ownership Economy. It basically was an investment thesis. It was hey, we should have a driver-owned Uber, a Dasher-owned DoorDash, a talent-owned McKinsey or Upwork or Fiverr. And in 2018, I actually co-founded a hedge fund called Cambrian. And my idea was to deploy capital into this thesis. And I had two problems there. One, almost no projects to deploy capital into, and two, no LP interest. So wasn't a great investment thesis in 2018. Turns out in hopefully fast forward 5 years, that this concept is finally making sense, right? We're finally realizing scale here. We were very early when we started this. So Braintrust spun out of Cambrian. And that's sort of our origin story.
Yeah, wow, I did not know that. That's a super cool origin story. I mean, that's its own two-sided marketplace in itself, right? Like deep in projects that are around that are able to be invested in, and also LPs interested in investing in them from the get-go. So it sounds like you were even maybe potentially like thinking about deepen, thinking about investing and building in deepen before the term was even around, before Helium had really pivoted to a crypto incentive model in 2019. Um,
Yeah, I was
that's
there
really
with
cool. I mean, I
Helium
think like
right when they did that pivot. I was one of the early participants there as well. I'm a huge fan of what they're doing, and yeah, you're right. Look, you're always either too early or too late, right? So you got to pick one.
right. Yeah, I mean, I think for probably Mahesh and I and our listeners, like the way we've thought about two-sided marketplaces most often is in the context of a DePIN, so a physical infrastructure network that's built in a decentralized way. Um, Sounds like you've definitely done a lot of thinking on the topic. I'm just curious, like, what does DePIN mean to you? You know, would you consider Braintrust a DePIN, or is it slightly different? Yeah, just curious your thoughts on
Yeah,
deepens broadly.
I love that we now have a term for this that people can understand and remember,
Thank
right?
God.
Thank God. I mean, I first heard DePIN only a few months ago, probably. I mean, yeah, but I have been thinking about it for years. The way I define it is blockchain-based networks that create value in the real world, not the crypto world, right? So, um, Uniswap creates all this value, Compound, Aave create all this value, in a token world, right? And they're important. Those are important primitives for how we're rebuilding the global financial system. In the physical world, you have, you know, blockchain, tokenized cell networks, tokenized drone networks, tokenized talent marketplaces. So, cell network is like hard physical infrastructure. Labor marketplaces, I mean, people are physical. We're like meat computers, right? So we're physical infrastructure as well. And so I think about DPIN as a broad umbrella of like anything that's using this blockchain technology to create real value in the real world outside of the crypto world.
Yeah. No, I think that makes a lot of sense. Like I also agree. Deepen's a pretty broad term, but I'm glad we have one term to kind of rally behind. And if we have to kind of further segment it down the line, or I think we're already starting to a bit with hardware that like needs to be in certain locations, like a Wi-Fi router, versus hardware that's more commoditized and that can be anywhere, like nodes for Filecore and decentralized storage or other projects like that. Like having one term is definitely appreciated, I think, and good for attention and awareness for the space as a whole. Um, so I think before we talk about the Web3 aspects of Brain Trust, I think it's probably most helpful to walk through the Web2 aspects and just like two kind of scenarios. One, what the typical user experience would be for someone that's looking to be hired, kind of how that process would work, and then also maybe uh, a quick overview of what it would look like for a company that's looking to onboard to the platform and hire, whether it's contractor, kind of full-time equivalents. So yeah, I mean, just kind of step by step, basically, what would that look like for both those
Yeah,
flows?
sure. And these two flows are largely Web 2. Uh, you know, lot of AI mixed in now, of course, because that's how we really scale this thing. But on the talent side, talent gets referred or hears about us or otherwise signs up. They build a profile. They tell us what their skills are, what role types they want to be matched to, and then they get put into a queue. In that, now they can go participate on our professional network. They can ask for career help or give career advice. We've sort of built this kind of two-sided marketplace for giving and getting career help that we're slowly introducing the token as a value exchange medium there. So they can immediately do that. But on the job marketplace, they have to wait to be vetted by our community and our AI systems before they can actually apply to jobs. And that's done through a combination of AI and community members. And they basically have to prove that they are who they say they are. Their language proficiencies in the languages they claim, they can code in the skills they claim, design, product management, whatever it is, right? Braintrust is the value prop to clients is this is enterprise grade talent who they say they are, who are reliable, who will do a good job for you, right? And so, which is a very different value prop than you'll see on an Upwork or a Fiverr. And so on the client side,
Yeah.
they can sign up. Any client can sign up for themselves. If we detect that it's an enterprise client, we have team, enterprise account reps that will then intercept that lead and make sure we onboard this person or this big company, with white glove service to make sure they have a great experience. We can, API into their job boards, suck in job posts and that kind of stuff. We're building all kinds of AI and automation here to just bring all those jobs into Braintrust automatically instead of having to manually repost stuff. But then they post a role. It could be a contract role, it could be a full-time job, short, long, doesn't matter. Average job size. The average client spends something like $260,000 on Braintrust. Average individual job size something like 90 grand. So these are big jobs, right? It's not like design me a logo or a
Yeah.
website, for $200. Um, then we're
Right.
building an AI matching system that matches qualified talent with these jobs that get posted, and we have human matchers that have been training our AI system to do as good of a job as humans, and then our next milestone is do a 10x better job than any human could on creating a really good match between candidates and jobs. So that's sort of the flow from the Web 2 side. The Web 3 side, where we use token, we have a Braintrust token, native token. It's fixed supply ERC20 on Ethereum. Um, it is used as an incentive mechanism and a governance system. So the incentive mechanism, this has kind of been part of the secret sauce for the growth here. We have a referral engine, what we call a connector program, that anybody can sign up, say, I'm here to refer talent, or I'm here to refer clients. You get a unique code. You send that code. If a client signs up, starts transacting, every time that client pays an invoice, the protocol sends tokens, Braintrust tokens, out to the person who made the referral. So you get this so we have like thousands or hundreds or low thousands of people who just refer clients right there. It's like an outsourced sales team, basically. They refer clients, and if those clients sign up, they just get this stream. This is like annuity stream of tokens coming at them. And then same with the talent side. Most of our talent has come in through referral or whatever. And so the tokens, the Braintrust token, it's a way to sort of like grow the network faster, because you have this, interesting token economy.
Right. Like as an incentive mechanism. And it's kind of like automated programmatic like a affiliate
Fully
program
automated, exactly.
for talent.
Yeah, you
Right?
can't game it. Like
Yes.
you can invite 10,000 people who are all like spam bots or whatever, and fine. But if none of them ever transact on the network, then you never get paid, right? So you really can't game the system.
Right. No, gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. Why'd you choose to build this in a decentralized way? Like, why did you want governance to be in the hands of the talent and also the companies on the platform? How does the whole decentralization piece work in
Yeah.
practice?
So there's upsides and downsides to decentralization. The upside is you create a permissionless system where anybody can come in and join as talent, join as client, join as a connector, grow the network. Like we can't stop you, right? You can come in and we have this like decentralized recruiting force and a decentralized sales force, right? That are just earning. They want to earn tokens because that it's something they can easily do with like a few minutes of time, right? It's not a full-time job. Um, and then they can use the tokens to either upskill, get career help in the professional network, and or govern the network through token voting, right? So there's multiple reasons they'd want to earn those tokens and hold on to them. Um, that's the upside. Our core teams only have like 33 employees. If I had to hire people, then we've built this $100 million business with 30 something people. Like if without the Web3 component, without the community being incentivized to grow this, I'd have to hire hundreds or thousands of employees, right? Which is a nightmare. I don't want to do that. Now, the downside of decentralization is coordination. And so, you know, we do our best to herd the cats. But I feel like when you have um, everyone rowing in the same direction from an incentive standpoint of growing the network, coordination becomes a little easier.
Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense, and that definitely sounds very much like a lot of DePINs and like how they use
Yeah.
tokens, like as an incentive mechanism, so that they can reduce their overhead. They can coordinate people around the world to do whatever they need to get done. In your case, it's like referring talent, hiring talent, etc. Um, gotcha. Okay, I think there's also, and I think another benefit of having a token as the incentive mechanism versus like USDC payments or something is that, I mean, this can work against you as well, maybe in a bear market, but like when there's a speculative premium that's attached to your token because people are interested in the project, they're buying it, they're increasing the price like above and beyond whatever the kind of core fundamental price should be, like that additional speculative premium is basically additional fuel that you can use to supercharge your network growth that you wouldn't have been able to get if you were using a stable coin for an incentive mechanism, or dollars, like fiat dollars. So I think that's another benefit of token incentives and DePINs that you all are probably experiencing as well.
Yeah, well, that's absolutely true. And the other thing is like my cost for a USDC is $1. My cost for my own token was 0. So one of the benefits of creating a native token.
Yeah, no, 100%. I wanted to double click on the vetting talent piece of kind of like the user experience flow. So it sounds like there's probably some token incentive mechanism that is set up so that, are there like basically like are there video calls where people are getting vetted? You're also using AI, but then you probably need to compensate those people spending time to vet new talent on the platform. Like how does that piece work?
Yeah. It's basically all the above, everything you just said. So it's asynchronous testing. We use some third parties for background checks. We record videos, video interviews. We feed the AI engine with those. There's humans involved sometimes. Sometimes there's not. There's sometimes those humans are paid in tokens. Sometimes they're paid in dollars. Like we have an array of programs. The goal is to have it like as AI powered as possible. But in the today and prior, having token incentives around having community screeners has definitely been a helpful way to bootstrap the network.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, that's awesome. In terms of the revenue model for Braintrust, can you walk us through how that typically works? Like, I'm assuming you're being paid by like corporations that are making hires, not any talent that's like signing up for the platform. So if you could just talk a bit about like what a typical revenue kind of order of
Yeah,
operations would look like, and then how that impacts the token as
yeah,
well.
absolutely. So I'll walk through kind of step by step. So let's say Connor, you're a really great product manager and you get approved on Braintrust and you win a contract with Goldman Sachs. Goldman Sachs at the end of the month, you invoice them $100,000. The system actually generates 2 invoices to Goldman. One with Connor's name on it for 100 grand because you get 100% of what you contracted the role from. Right? We're not taking any fees out of your portion. Then there's a 15% network fee which is paid by the client. So Goldman gets 2 invoices, one for 100 grand, and I'll pay cash. It's not a crypto payment platform. Um, we use Stripe and TransferWise and all these other partners. Like if you wanted to get paid in some crypto, you could do it. Nobody generally does. You just you get paid dollars. Um, but Connor will get paid 100 grand that flows through our pipes right directly to you, no fees. Um, then the 15% network fee, Goldman pays that as well via Wire or Stripe or whatever. That money is then at some point converted into USDC and sent to what we call fee converter, which is a smart contract on Ethereum that takes dollars from client fees and goes and buys Braintrust tokens out in the open market and takes those tokens and puts them into our on-chain treasury, but some you might call it a DAO. That on-chain treasury, which if you go to our dashboard, this is all linked. You can all watch all this stuff happen on chain. That on-chain treasury is meant to fund future protocol development, right? And those funds can only be released through token voting, token proposals, token voters. That's a decentralized piece of it. The thinking is someday when our original treasury that's paying these referral rewards, when that runs out, the referral rewards and grants and whatever will be paid from this on-chain treasury that's funded by client fees, right? So you can kind of see the ecosystem here, right? So, talent joins, clients hire talent, client pays the fees fund the DAO's used to fund more referrals, more grants to expand the network, and that's the growth wheel right there.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Does 100? So you charge companies that are hiring talent 15% basically of like the contract value. Does 100% of that 15% go towards buying back Braintrust tokens, or is it like split up in a variety of
Pretty
ways?
close to 100% goes into that fee converter. And that's why we raised money from early backers, was to kind of subsidize network operations, for the first few years, maybe 5 years, whatever.
Right.
At some point in the future, in the next year or 2 or 3, some percentage of those fees will have to cover OpEx of the core teams. But the goal is to always kind of
Right.
push as much of that net back into the fee converter.
Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense. And I can see how the flywheel can become sustainable over time as you basically are running enough contract value through the network. What, like, roughly what kind of revenue have you all done so far, maybe in the past 12
Sure.
months?
I'll just give you really quick numbers from inception. So 2020 was our first year, partial year. Did about 6 million of GSV, gross service value, what we call it, revenue. Second year, 2021, it was something like 32 million. Last year, 2022, it was around 86 million. And then this year's going to be kind of like not great growth, kind of flat. We're somewhere between 90 and 100 is our guess, but mainly because of the global macro environment. It's just been so rough, and there's so many companies on hiring freeze. But that's roughly the scale. It's been a nice growth curve so far.
Gotcha. And is that revenue like through the platform, or is that your 15%
Yeah,
take
that's
rate
top line through the
of
platform.
of the Okay, gotcha. So then, like, I guess revenue attributable to the network's roughly 15%
That's right. And
of that.
this is all on that info.braintrust.com. You can see every dollar that's ever moved through the network since inception.
Gotcha. Okay, awesome. I think last question from me, then over to Mahesh. But I'm curious, like, how you think about different levers to pull to continue growing the platform. Like, you kind of just mentioned the macro environment has not been great. Obviously, that's something you can't exactly control. But I think I saw you speaking on TV a couple of days ago, actually, about how like the tech and crypto sectors of the economy, the knowledge workers may have, well, usually just are ahead of the rest of the economy in terms of both token prices and hiring up, and also on the way down, just because they're naturally more risky. I think they're further out on the risk curve. So I guess, yeah, macro aside, yeah, what kind of levers do you think about pulling when you're trying to grow the Brain Trust network?
Yeah. So there's two things here. I mean, to set the table, like job marketplaces are in hiring in general, employment, knowledge worker employment in general is cyclical, correlated to macro, right? To macroeconomic growth or contraction, which is correlated to the Fed funds rate, right? We're all learning that one the hard way this year. And so
Yeah.
as the Fed funds rate, skyrocketed up 500 basis points this year, it melted down hiring and created these massive layoffs, right? I mean, just unbelievable, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of highly paid, highly skilled workers being laid off. So Braintrust has to put some more numbers behind it, a year ago we had about 80,000 on the talent network, on the talent side. Fast forward 12 months, we will cross 500,000 in the next 24 hours. And all word of mouth, whatever, referrals, the CAC is zero on that talent. And it's largely due to global macro. So your job, so if the economy runs in a sine wave, as does all businesses tied to the global macro economy like Braintrust, your job in the trough is to load up on whatever side you're not constrained on. So when there's dwindling demand as there is today, we 5x the talent group for free. In a year from now or 18 months from now, we're going to have a ton of demand again, just like we did 2 years ago. 2 years ago, I had a wait list of clients. We didn't have enough talent to fill them, right? I mean, it was like there was so much client demand, zero interest rates, right? 2 years later, inverse. 2 years from now, probably back at the top of the sine wave, right? So your job when you have a cyclical business is twofold. One, build as much scale into your model as you can. And we're doing that through AI recruiting, AI matching, AI filtering, AI sales, right? Like I know it's a buzzword, but like we can 10x GSV in this network without hiring many, maybe hiring a few more core team members, right? But not 10xing. Tech companies have this bad habit of 10xing revenue and then 10xing headcount along with it, right? It's just totally antithetical to the concept of tech. So we're the opposite of that. We are extremely operationally efficient thanks to technology. And then the second thing is where our professional network comes in. Build value creation for that can be anti-cyclical, right? So to de-jargon that, like right now, talent only, before our professional network, talent only would come to Braintrust if they're in market for a job. There's nothing else to do. So we built this professional network where they can come give and get career help and advice and mentorship. And there's plenty of people who like doing both of those, receiving it or giving it or both. And you can do that any time of at any point in your career, unemployed, employed, whatever. And it gives people a reason to come interact with Braintrust, hope maybe earn some Braintrust tokens or spend some, and build a reputation of being a good mentor or upskill. And that gives you something to do on Braintrust that should counteract the cyclicality of what I just described. So those are the two kind of buckets of levers we pull to make sure this thing grows as fast as possible, regardless of what direction the economy is going.
Yeah, really interesting, and interesting to be talking about cycles here. We kind of touched on this earlier, but one of the aspects of crypto businesses versus traditional businesses is reflexivity is such a big part of the business. At the end of the day, your token is going up and down. People are being paid in that token, so it creates some pretty interesting behavioral related relationships. One question I have for you though is one of the interesting aspects of Braintrust, specifically versus the rest of the token world, is you guys have actually equitized your token. Like there's no equity, I think you mentioned, and the token is really ownership in the network at the end of the day. So when you think about employees participating, have they been comfortable holding the token through the cycle? I know price has been a tough one just given the bear market and everything going on. How do you keep and retain those types of producers producing at the highest level when you have the reflexivity in the token price underlying?
Sometimes you got to give them more tokens.
Yeah, it makes sense. So it sounds like you guys think about the payout of tokens on the basis of like where price is at any given point, but like the goal is just to be extremely fair to these contributors and making sure that, the value that they accrue is value that's really theirs.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's we only have like 30 something employees. So it's really not a big issue. It's a small drop in the bucket from the broader brain trust economy. But I think it's an important point you're making. Like so the referral engine rewards proportionate to whatever side we're constrained on, right? So if you refer us more talent today, you'll get something, right? But we don't need more talent. We just 5x the talent group, and we're going to continue. We're going to 5x it again, is my guess. If you refer us clients that have a bunch of open roles, you're going to get more, right? Because that's the side we're constrained on. And so one of the things we do is make sure we're like tweaking the reward ratios based on what we need more of, right? So I think to your point, like using the token in a smart way to make the growth engine go faster.
Yeah, makes sense. And then when you think about the other side of this being the corporate clients themselves, you see a lot of news, you see a lot of senators talking a lot right now, trying to kill crypto, trying to pass all sorts of bills that, again, benefit their clients, their jurisdictions, and not necessarily the world as a whole. How have you found corporate players dealing with the changes in the crypto marketplace? And you're in a very unique position because you deal with a lot of them on an ongoing basis. Is there anything you might be able to share for broader listeners in terms of how that relationship is going and maybe how it's changed over the last couple of years?
Yeah, well, let me say two quick things on this topic. First of all, like our clients don't care at all about this, right? The pitch kind of goes, "Hey, it's Braintrust. We've got the top 1 or 2% talent in the world, fully vetted, and you're going to pay lower fees." And they're like, "Oh yeah, how's that?" Well, it's a network owned by the talent themselves, so we don't want to charge ourselves a lot of fees, so you're going to get the best people with the best economics, lowest fees. And I'm like, "Oh, that's cool. How do you coordinate that?" "Oh, with a blockchain token." And they're like, "Okay, never mind. I forget I asked. I don't care. Like as long as this value prop is true, we don't care about the token." They never touch the token. All of that fee converter stuff is automated on chain for them. We abstract all that complexity away, so they don't care. They just like that it works. On the sort of regulatory side, I mean, look, I was just last month in DC with Brian Armstrong from Coinbase and some other CEOs. And we met with a bunch of representatives, Daryl Issa, Nancy Pelosi, and a bunch of. I'm on the West Coast, so it was our representatives, and Braintrust was a big part of this. Like, hey, we know some people. It's actually just like 1 or 2 people who really hate crypto. The rest of them, they don't care, right? I mean, they want Sam Bankman-Fried to go to jail. Obviously, he's the bad actor. We want the bad actors to go away. But like, Brian's like, hey, look, here's Braintrust. They help people get better jobs and make more money, and not have to leave Omaha for San Francisco, right? Like, those are all good things, right? Like, we talked to the representative Lee from Nevada, and I was like, we're keeping jobs in Vegas. We're keeping people in Nevada. Is they don't have to move to California to work, right? And like, yeah, we use crypto to make this job network better for both sides. And like, yeah, cool. We're all for it, right? There's not some religious war in DC against this outside of the Warren Gensler kind of duo.
That was also our take as well. It seems like maybe a couple of players that have been driven almost to extremes by nature of the positions they've already taken are now just fighting for their lives. And the nature of fighting for your lives leads to just continuous irrational action. I, for one, like I see all of this stuff coming out of the SEC on a daily basis almost now, like corruption related stuff. It is kind of unbelievable that like this is a civil regulatory agency tasked with investor protection. But that's kind of the state of where the world is right now. I keep going to this point that like the most exciting outcome is going to be the outcome that everyone sees.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Mahesh. Like I look at this, I look at the way these regulatory bodies are behaving, and like I'm like, we'll look back at this in 5 years and be like, can you believe the government overreach we were putting up with? Like it'll be shocking in hindsight. But look, hats off. I have to plug Coinbase here. Brian and that team. Brian's such a great leader for this space. He's sort of the unwitting kind of face of it right now, and such a smart and eloquent and genuine guy. And we're lucky to have him kind of leading this for us in the U.S.
Absolutely. Maybe one or two more here. One that I've been thinking a lot about, high level question, would love to get your take on it. And, to the extent that it's something that you don't want to, fair enough. But I've actually just been thinking about the last 20 years of technology and proliferation within society. We have social media. Social media takes up more and more of our time. You have streaming takes up more of our time, gamified experiences. I feel like even though we've built so much in the last 25 years, it's unbelievable how much we've built. You look at GDP growth, productivity, it's only 2-3%. And part of me is looking at that and saying, part of it is all of these technologies are consumer facing, and it's just an income versus substitution effect whereby people's lives are getting so much easier now. They're sort of choosing maybe to work more or to work less than they theoretically were previously. And the result of that is like, even with all of this technological change going on, we're just not seeing like the uptick in productivity that like we would have thought that we would see 10 years ago, especially with AI coming to market and crypto making automated payments and automated everything so easy. I guess my question for you would be, when you think about how technology has changed society over the last 20 years, particularly when it like has to do with the labor force and changing labor preferences, you know, do you see people working differently in terms of productivity, even if output is in terms of hours has gone down, as it sounds like maybe you think it has?
Yeah, this is a fascinating concept to contemplate from a macro standpoint. We look at it from the bottoms up, like the value prop of having more access and more competition to remote labor that's, verified, skilled, whatever, quality guaranteed. Um, that's a net deflationary effect on tech, right? So, think about when I started Dr. On Demand 10 years ago at 275 Battery Street here in Jackson Square. Uh, I had to have all the engineers in that office, and I was paying $100 a square foot, and the engineers were all making 200 to 300 grand a year or whatever, and that it was a incredibly expensive load. And so, that's a contributor to GDP, I guess, right? And now Braintrust, which is a much larger business than Dr. On Demand was at that phase, from a GSV standpoint, has engineers all over the world making, small fraction of that, and we have no office, right? So tech, so Asana and Google Docs and Zoom allowed us to not ever have to sign another lease. And then Brain Trust allows you to not have to stuff a bunch of very expensive engineers in the same room. So, it's deflationary, which probably explains, the impedance on GDP, but it's the productivity is 10x, right? Like we ship faster, we do much more. We now have teams, working 24/7, right? It's in Europe or South America or North America or Southeast Asia. The sort of the sun never sets on the development cycle, right? And so, um, all for less money. So you're getting more done, which should create more output, right? So that's what I'm just describing, like the tide flowing out while the wind pushes the waves in. It's like you have this two competing forces, but it's net good for uh, value creation, right? I mean, companies can build faster and break orbit faster.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is really interesting to think about because like remote work plus platforms like Brain Trust, I think almost make the labor market like more efficient or or more fair because you can access talent in more places around the world more easily, and so therefore you might not need to pay that talent as much. And even if that's like deflationary in terms of GDP or salaries that talent is earning, like the same work is likely getting
Let,
done out
totally.
there. So yeah,
I'll give you
just
another
super interesting.
interesting paradigm to sort of frame this in, and to attribute this to Alex Wang, who's the CEO of Scale AI, and which, by the way, is I think Scale AI is the fastest growing client on Brain Trust. They're tapping hundreds and hundreds of new tech roles per month on Brain Trust. But Alex described it as, look, you can break the constituent inputs for AI growth into three pieces: compute, training, classification, and talent, right? And they play in the middle, right? The the cloud guys play in the first one. Brain Trust is the third one, right? And these are the sort of raw material inputs that will propel this kind of AI trajectory forward. So that's how we think about it.
Makes a lot of sense. Maybe last one just to wrap it up. At the end of the day, we've talked about a lot of big transformative changes. Adam, last question for you. Do you think people are happier using brain trust, using part-time work, having that flexibility? And would love anything you can talk to of, talking to your customers, talking to people across your network of, examples that they might have of how this has impacted their life in a positive way.
Yeah, I mean, look, the talent stories are endless. We used to like go out of our way to like build case studies and publish them, and then we were just overwhelmed by them. Like, single moms in Florida who are unemployed, but then found a gig on Brain Trust, and now make more money than they did at their salary job, and pay less in childcare, and get to spend more time with their little kids. We started to hear that story pre-pandemic. And then obviously during the pandemic, there's just no good stories. It's all bad. And then coming out of it, we hear it constantly from town. We hear it so much that we don't even bother highlighting it anymore. We like it. This is not unique anymore. This story of like, I make more money now as a remote contractor than I did going into an office somewhere. And I have like a huge chunk of my time back to spend with my family. And look, that's true for me personally. Like, I used to commute into an office in San Francisco. It's my own company, right? I mean, I have no one to blame here but myself. But like, I missed out on, my twin boys, like some of their early childhood. And now I have a little daughter who like, I'm home more. I get to see her more. This is a ubiquitous story, right? And Braintrust didn't invent this. Like remote work invented this. And we're proud at Braintrust to be furthering the remote work concept and teaching best practices to clients so they can make some of these roles remote. The only reason a company would resist remote work is if they don't understand how to manage it, right? I understand it's a big paradigm shift, right? To go from you spend all this money on an office to we're going to go all remote, and look, there's some companies just leaned right into it. Drew at Dropbox, he walked away from that lease down by Chase Center and said, screw it, we're all remote, we'll figure it out. And they did a great job transitioning, right? Very advanced company. Some of these bigger clients we have, we're helping them, into this new remote world. So the stories of people getting autonomy in their life back are super compelling.
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, it's an unlock for the world, and it's something that should make us happier and more productive. And I'm sort of excited to see all of that play out. So,
Yeah.
with that, Adam, this has been awesome. Maybe if you want to say any last words and tell our audience where to find you on the internet, where to find anything that you might want to point them towards.
Yeah, I mean, look, you should join if you're a knowledge worker in sort of the tech or tech adjacent sector. You should join Braintrust and come check out our professional network. If you're more later in your career and like to help younger people, there's a lot of people looking for advice. If you're early in your career and want to get some mentorship, there's plenty of people looking to help you. Come over to Braintrust, click on the professional network. It's just braintrust.com. If you are in the market for a job, we've got those. If you want to refer clients and earn some tokens, go to Braintrust, sign up as a connector, get your code, and start referring. Refer your current employer, refer anybody who might be looking to hire. And as soon as they get through the system and start hiring, you're going to get a stream of tokens headed to your wallet.
That's awesome. Well, with that, really appreciate your time here, and congratulations on all the success so far. And we're looking forward to sort of seeing Braintrust be there among the biggest and best projects in the world as we sort of move into the next bull market here.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, guys. Really enjoyed the conversation.